Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW for podcast show details. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast, and I'm very passionate about my guest today. You know, we tend to hide things underneath the carpet. Well, not on Chatting with Betsy. I bring it out in the open. I pop the lid on what people think are taboo subjects, but they're not taboo. They need to be brought out in the public, and I'm not afraid to do it. Now I'm going to introduce my guest. She is a wonderful person, has a wonderful story to tell. She is author of Who Kicked First, a memoir. She's available on Amazon. She has a Facebook group, A Contagious Smile, a podcast, A Contagious Smile. My guest is Victoria Cuore. I hope I said your last name right, Victoria. And she has a story. Thank you.
Thank you.
About you're welcome. About domestic violence. Yes, it's out there, folks, and it's real. And I'll tell you something. The pandemic, we've seen mental health professionals have seen an increase in domestic violence. It occurs, it doesn't matter what social economic class you are, your ethnic background, it happens. We don't know what happens behind other people's closed doors, and I'm glad that someone like Victoria Cuore wrote a book, and she's out here talking about it and sharing her story. Kudos to you, Victoria Cuore.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's very brave of you. So I have to ask you, what inspired you to write your book?
Well, let's see, that's kind of interesting. I was sitting in the NICU with my daughter. I was in a wheelchair, and I was not allowed to stimulate her because she was in a medically induced coma. And so I literally was singing to her and telling her stories and just letting her hear my voice. And I literally was being interrogated by any and everyone as I went through this, because so often it's the victims that are being attacked again, all over again, when we're trying to get justice for what has transpired. So I had my laptop, and I just started to scream, if you will, into my laptop, because I had no one. I went through this by myself, alone. And so I just started writing everything down, because I had the most outlandish questions asked to me. Well, who saw him break your nose? I don't look around my surroundings when my face is being hit. I don't know who would. And so I just started screaming into my computer, and after it was a good few weeks, almost a month, I had this amazing spirited respiratory therapist who came in, and she'd sit down with me, and she said, you know what, I see you doing this all the time. You would be helping so many people if you published it. And I looked at her, and I said, have you met him? And she goes, well, we've seen him. And I said, I already survived death's door a few times. I don't want to go back. And she's like, this would help so many people. Well, I just kept venting and venting and venting, and it took me about 10 years before I was completely comfortable enough The only things that were changed were geographic locations and names. Everything else is 1,000% factual and provable, and I put it out there, and that's how it all became the realism of the book.
That's incredible. And I always say this to people who have had a tragedy. Out of a tragedy can come something beautiful. And you have your daughter, and you are being an advocate for domestic violence, domestic abuse, and that takes a lot of strength. How did you, I don't know how to word this, I was just going to ask it. How did you find yourself in that situation of being in an abusive relationship for so long? And how long were you in this abusive relationship?
Well, I had broken up with the love of my life, who I thought I was going to have my forever with. And the only time ever in our lives that, you know how we are when we're young, the only time I ever rebounded was with this monster, we'll call him. And I sat down when I met him, and he was just talking, and we didn't meet like it was going to be a date or anything. We just happened to be at the same place at the same time. And he started talking to me, and he was so easy to talk to. He was so charming and so charismatic and just so alluring. Not physically, but like he was alluring with his words. And the man that I had broken up with had met him, and they hated each other. Like they met after this guy and I started seeing each other, and they absolutely hate each other. Well, then this guy started to just literally put me in the express lane of the expedition of our relationship. Like it was, you know, you travel for work and I don't get to see you as much as I want to, so we need to move in together. And I was like, yo, hey, whoop, let's put on the brakes and see what this is. And then he would guilt trip me and say, you know, oh, he was a military person. And he said, you know, I've been overseas and I've been in combat and I've been this and I've been that. And I've waited so long to find someone who actually gets me, and I want a family, I want kids. And I had conveyed to him that I wanted to be a mom so bad. That was my one thing. If I could have anything more in the world, that would be it. I wanted to be a mom. And he played that card very well. And so then he would say, you know, we just need to get married. We've been alone without the right person long enough. Isn't it time that we start our journey of happiness? And I would feel like such an idiot. I'd be like, why am I giving him like the big stop sign when he didn't do anything wrong? And he would just, I felt like I was Beetlejuice with my head swimming around. And next thing I know, we didn't even live together until we were married, because I had an apartment, and like I said, I was traveling for work, and he was rushing me to this marriage. And I kept saying, we're going too fast, and if it's meant to be, you know, what's 6 more months? And he was like, because, you know, in 6 more months I could be deployed again. And it just always made me feel horrible. So on the day of the wedding, and Betsy, I'm going to kind of give your listeners a little clue of my age. On the day of the wedding, I sat on the bathroom floor when I was supposed to be getting ready with my Palm Pilot, looking at airfare to return home, because I knew this was wrong. I mean, just knew it. And everything inside me said this was wrong. Well, I started, and I don't push religion on anyone, I started to think about it, and I prayed about it, and I just sat there for, I don't even know how long it was. I didn't have a watch, and obviously no clock in the bathroom, for a while. And then I just felt like this overwhelming sense of something amazing is going to come out of this. And so I picked myself up, and we got married. And it was such a life-altering event, because we had gotten married across country to be with his family, and then I moved in with him after, and we got pregnant right away. And as soon as we knew we were pregnant, that's when the abuse started.
And how old were you, Victoria?
Early 30s.
Oh, okay, so you were early 30s. So it's not like you were, a teenager or in your early 20s.
No.
Did you have relationships where you were abused before?
Not romantic relationships, no. Not a significant other, no.
Oh, okay, because they say usually you tend to attract the same kind of, men, unless you break the cycle. And so I'm interested, I'm sure the audience is, I ask questions that I'm interested in. How did the abuse start? Your ex-husband sounds, I don't know, I'm not a psychiatrist, people, or a social worker, but sounds to me like he was your typical narcissist.
Yes.
Knowing your weak spots, love bombing you.
Yes. And you know what? It was I hadn't had relationships, intimate relationships with anyone like that. It was the unfortunate events of my home life growing up that I experienced that really drew me into this individual, I guess you could say. So I just wanted to clarify that. But we were talking and like I started to see like tiny little bits of differences in his disposition, and I'm now pregnant and I'm thinking it just has to be the hormones, because he's just, for whatever reason, he's just acting a little different, whatever. And so then we got into a discussion. Well, I don't yell. Even when I'm mad, I don't yell. I have this mentality that if you say something in the moment, you can't take that away 15, 20 years from now. So why yell at someone that obviously you care for? Talk about it and give them the respect you want in return. So I'm not perfect. I admit that first and foremost, but I would hold my own, but I'm not going to yell and scream and be disrespectful at the same time. I had a lot of my grandparents' mentality because they did a lot for me growing up. So I always had that treat others as you want to be treated, respect kind of thing. So he started yelling and screaming at me, and I was just like, why do you have to yell at me? Can't you calm down and just talk to me? And next thing I know, he threw his cell phone and hit me in the face. And I just kind of stood there, Betsy, and was dumbfounded. I was like, I know he didn't just do that. Like, that didn't just happen. I know that didn't just happen to me. And he got up in my face, and then he hit me. And I looked at him, and I said, I don't know what just happened, but it's not going to happen again. And he stormed off. And then he comes back with, why did you make me do that to you? Why didn't you just do what I asked? And I was like, oh, my God, this man's turning it around and making me feel bad. And I started to feel bad. I was like, why did I just do what he asked? And then maybe this wouldn't have happened.
And so typical of the abuser to make it your fault. Like, if you would have listened to me, if you would have done this, I wouldn't have had to have hit you. So it's your fault. And then they are so manipulative and can really mess with someone's head. Go ahead. I just had to add that in there because I've read so much, about this, that this is what these men do. I have to add this, Victoria, because we were talking before recording, and I want to point this out to the audience. Don't judge people. When they are in an abusive relationship, don't think it can't happen to you. And I really have to say this from my heart. When you were brought up, if a girl or even a boy is brought up in an emotionally abusive relationship, in family relationships, and they are told they're not good enough, they're ugly, they're fat, they're stupid, that impresses them for the rest of their life. And guess what, folks? That makes that girl or that boy more prone to be in abusive relationships. So please, parents, guardians, please treat your child with respect. Please don't do a number on them mentally, because I'm telling you, this is where women, especially women, go into abusive relationships because they think they're not good enough because they were told that from their parents. And I just had to say that because the abuser will use that. I just interviewed a former sex trafficker a couple of weeks ago. They know the weaknesses. and they use them. These people, these narcissistic people, however you pronounce it, are they know, yes, they know how to manipulate. Yes, thank you. They know how to manipulate people. And so it's not, people think, I used to think the same thing too, before I knew better. Well, why don't they just get up and walk away? Well, you can't always get up and walk away. It's not that easy. Go ahead, Victoria. I had to go on my soapbox. Go ahead.
No. So the abuse started escalating as time went on. And like I said, I own what I do. I absolutely. I knew he was cheating on me. And I know some of your listeners might not understand this, but I told him, I said, I know you're seeing other women, and I'm okay with it. And I was like, you don't have to sneak it behind my back. You can just go out and do it. And I speak to women and their families often, and I had someone ask me, why did you tell your husband that it's okay for him to cheat on you and you're pregnant? And I said, well, that's really simple. First of all, then he's not home beating me. And second of all, he's in that dating, love bombing phase, looking for whomever. And I know whoever else is not in that threat zone. Not that I was more concerned about me and my unborn child, but I also knew that if he was out there, it was handling his own needs, and I also wasn't getting beaten. So I absolutely did. I told him, go ahead, because then he wouldn't be home. So people find that so unusual, but wouldn't you, if you were in my situation, find an excuse for him not to be there?
That's true. Yeah. I'd say go ahead.
So, yeah.
Go ahead. Be out all day and night.
Well, and that's just it, and I apologize because I know some of this for the listeners are going to be extremely hard to hear, and I do apologize. But I only had consensual intercourse with him like twice. Everything else was forced and against will. So if he's out with his girlfriends, then he's not coming home and raping his pregnant wife. And
don't apologize, Victoria.
Well,
yeah,
I just
you don't have to apologize.
Any of your listeners. I have had over 100 surgeries to correct what he has done to me. I've been stabbed over a dozen times. My daughter calls me the titanium woman because my whole left side has basically been replaced with titanium. I've had bilateral jaw replacement for the mandible and the mandibular jaws. Both of them have been replaced on both sides. I have hearing aids because both my eardrums were ruptured so badly that I'm 80% deaf in one ear and 100% in the other. I am partially paralyzed now because of all the nerve damage, and I've even had a nerve transposition and a nerve transplant that were not successful. And the list goes on and on and on. The violence escalated as the time went on. It got out of control. Now, I do have to put in one disclaimer, Betsy, if you'll allow me, is that one hit, one punch, one kick, one hit, it's still one too many. And when I talk with anybody, I say to them, this is not a comparison. It's not a who went through it worse, because it's all bad. I don't care. If you got abused one time, 200 times, it is not okay, and you need to have your inner light brought back, and I want to help you do it. So that is such a big deal. It is not about that. And in my case, it was never a he said, she said, because I had documentation, because I kept going to his command and showing that this was transpiring. And they said, why do you keep having so much proof? Because you're not doing anything. And it's very frequently covered up by the military, as I learned, that they protect the soldier. And I even got confrontational and said, well, you know what? You're on the United States soil. How come you're not protecting the United States citizens? Why aren't you doing your job to protect us? He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. I mean, he broke my nose. Now, we were on a very, very small installation, and I know that not every military branch is bad. I know it. I know we have some fantastic soldiers. I know that not everyone is abusive, but if 1 in 3 military families are going through some sort of abuse, and those statistics are true, please tell me how many of those aren't coming forward for whatever reason, if that's 1 in 3. How many families are too afraid to come forward? Those numbers are staggering. True. It's a staggering thing.
Did you ever press charges?
Oh, yes, ma'am, I did. Yes, and he got away with it.
And that happens. Oh my goodness, that happens. You know, like restraining orders really don't mean much.
It's a paper cut. I got a restraining order. I got a protective order. I asked for a military protective order. I had him dead to rights. I had photographs that coincided with medical records, that coincided with sworn affidavits by my doctors, the nurses, the PAs. They all wrote statements. They all had sworn affidavits, and they all coincided with the injury that coincided with the pictures. He went on this bragging thing because they love to brag about what they do, and we even had him on audio admitting to everything, but he was released on a technicality and served no time.
It's terrible. Is he in jail now? Did he serve any time?
No.
Oh, that's a disgrace. That is absolutely horrible, and yet, folks, it's not unusual. It's not unusual that these people can do whatever they want and walk free.
Yes.
That has to be really scary for you to know that this person is out there.
It is. I went into that tigeress mom mode, if you will, where I went after the rights. And when you go after parental rights, it's very hard to get them terminated because they want to hold the other party accountable. And like I said, I was in a small military town. My whole panel was men. The judges were men. Guardian ad litem was a man. The guardian ad litem, for those who don't know the process, that it's the child's own attorney, and that responsibility is to investigate both sides, interview parties that know each of the defendant and plaintiff, really get to know the situation and what's best for that child. And I learned a lot about him that I had no idea about during this process, a lot, and it was incredibly scary. But we ended up winning, and we got the rights terminated. So we both have permanent restraining orders, and she was always on mine anyway, but he has no rights to her.
And your daughter, you have a daughter, and she has special needs. Is that because of the injuries that you had when you were pregnant?
Yes.
That is, my heart goes out to you. I could start crying right now, folks, because this breaks my heart. And I'm an emotional person. I don't apologize for that. But put yourself in Victoria's place. She has a child with special needs that will need care for the rest of her life. And this scum is walking free, and yet Victoria's in a type of prison, and so is her daughter for the rest of their life because of what they went through by this man's hands. That is not acceptable to me. I hope laws change. I hope the military changes in how they deal with domestic violence. And I hope laws change. I know that especially we had a case here in New Jersey with, a policeman killed his wife. She had a restraining order. They knew that he was violent, and they didn't do anything. And then it was late. Yeah. It's just you can't even comprehend. It's hard for my brain to even wrap around that this man didn't serve any time for the damage he did.
And I learned that I was not the first spouse that he did this to.
Wow. Oh, so he was married before, but you didn't know that.
Many times. No.
Wow.
He was married many times before me. And he had scars, and he told me that they were battle wounds from being overseas. And I found out later on one of them was from self-defense of one of his wives defending herself when he put a gun to her. And that's the real truth about it, and it's not what this fictitious thing that he came up with to make everybody feel guilty and feel horrible for him and what he did. He had no ability to own anything he did. Everything was everyone else's fault. He was notorious for doing nothing but putting me down. I was ugly, and I was doing him such a favor by just being, there as his servant, and I should just bow down to him because he's allowing me to serve him. And he would wake me up in the middle of the night, straddled over me, punching me in the face to go get him some water. Pregnant. That would be what he would do. And it was, and I tell so many people so many times, Betsy, I welcome family members and other members to come in with the victims, because so often I like to be able to kind of put a perspective in their head that they don't have, because really, unless you've walked in our shoes, you can't tell us how to tie up our laces. You can't. And
that's right.
It's so hard. And when I tell them, I've had a lady one time, and she was like, well, she deserved it. She stayed. And I said, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a domestic violence situation? She's like, no. I said, well, good for you. Good for you. Because between you, your sister, myself, and one other female in here, it's 1 in 4. So there's the numbers. And I said, no, good for you for never being through it. And let me ask you a question. On your worst day, let's just say of your worst day of your life, I want you to imagine coming home, and it's your spouse, it's your partner, it's your kids, whatever it is, just belittle you and degrade you just down to your core on that horrible day. Maybe you got fired from work. Maybe you broke up with your relationship. Whatever the case may be, I want you to imagine that day, and then I want you to imagine everyone you care about in your support system just coming at you on the attack on top of it. That would be one of our best days. You need to think about that, because here's the difference. Every one of these people in this audience that have gone through it have survived 100% of their worst days of their life. And they are stronger, they're more resilient, they are amazing. They are conquerors, they are survivors, and they are thriving. They have survived 100% of their worst days. And they are already one step ahead because they're here. Whether they realize that or not, they're here. And the reason so often that they go back is because they don't have in place a structured escape plan. I didn't. And the first time I tried to leave, he shot and killed my dog to show me what he would do to me if I left.
Wow.
So I knew I had to get my stuff together to protect me and my child. Well, and I tell people all the time, which I really wish would resonate with people, is instead of kicking them, metaphorically, when they're down, help them. Be a sense of support. Even if you just sit with them and let them know they're not alone. If they're at a point where they want to hold your hand, hold their hand. They want to talk, let them talk. Just listen. Don't place judgment. Don't offer advice if you don't know what to do and what's going on. Just let them talk. Let their voice be heard because they feel as if they're silenced. Let them have support. And that is so important. Be a product of support, not another reason why they're even more humiliated, because they don't need that. We get it enough. So offer them support. Offer them the ability just to sit in their room. If they don't want to talk, okay, let them know you're there. Hold their hand. Just let them listen. Be able to talk to them whenever they need it or whenever they're able to use the phone. Or better yet, offer them maybe the financial help to get out. Offer them a place to go. These are things that aren't offered. They just get judged upon. And that's what makes it so much harder, because we as the victims at the time feel like we have no one. We have nowhere to go. We have nothing to do. And when you hear something on repeat every single day, you begin to believe it. And that is what happens. And so you're like, well, maybe this is the best I'll ever get. Maybe if I just did what he told me to do every single time, I wouldn't get my face bashed in, and I wouldn't be his punching ground. That's not true. And I tell people, you could do everything to a T perfectly. Now let that individual, male or female, because men do get abused as well, come home in a bad mood because somebody cut him off on the way home. Maybe the person he was dating behind your back decided they couldn't see him that night. Maybe he got in trouble at work. maybe somebody, he got a ticket on the way home, whatever the case may be, he's going to come home and he is not going to notice that you have done everything to a T. He's going to notice that you're there and you are the reciprocating end of his bad day, and he's going to take it out on you anyway. So it's not you, it's them. And I really try to iterate that so they understand.
Yes, that's a very good point, Victoria. And also, people may not realize this, but usually the violence escalates.
It does.
It doesn't.
Time, it absolutely does.
Yeah. And people think, oh, well, they didn't mean it. I should have done this. It was my fault. And then, it might start with a slap. Then it could be a punch. And that usually does tend to escalate. How did you get out of this, Victoria, and be where you are now?
Well, we left. I finally, and I'm very thankful for it, my biological family finally met my daughter, and they offered us shelter, if you will. And so I went there, and I'm very thankful for that. And that is how we eventually got out. And I had, months at the hospital. My daughter, I never left her side. Together, we've had close to 140 operations between us. And I've never gone back after I moved out and moved in with my family at that point.
And how many years did that take for you to get out?
Oh, no. I didn't even make it to our first anniversary. I was out. Oh,
that's good. That's good that you got out, because some women are with their partners, their spouses for years.
He had me in the ICU too many times, and I was at death's door, and no. Mm-mm.
Wow, that is just, you have such an amazing, inspiring story, this tragedy, but now you are the victor. You are helping other women.
Thank you.
And you have, you are the Facebook group. People,
Yep.
The links will be in the blog. It's called that Contagious Smile. Where's your podcast located, Victoria?
Everywhere. It's everywhere. It's called A Contagious Smile. I would love to talk with any of your listeners that have gone through any of this, because I can kind of give them some help. Like you said yourself, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I've had many, many people tell me that I have got my doctorate in the School of Hard Knocks, and I can kind of tell you what I did. There's a lot of things people don't think about that I have kind of put in place. My website offers all sorts of things. If you go on it, it's contagiousmile.com, and if you go look at it, it doesn't look like it's for domestic violence. So God forbid your abuser or attacker come in, it looks like it's for special needs children. And I offer all sorts of things. I have free support groups, free social groups. I offer different things like life skill classes to help you maybe get into a new profession. I help write your resume. I'll do a letter of recommendation if you need it. I have a moving company in every state in the United States that will move you for free. The coalition in every state is also on there. I did graduate from paralegal school, and I do prepare lots of legal documents so that you have things in order. Like, one of the things that I tell people, and it seems like nobody thinks about it, is when you are in this situation, to do a medical power of attorney. And I'm so grateful that I did, because when I did it, luckily, when he tried to execute his rights as my quote-unquote husband, he was told, you have no right to make a decision here because we have our power of attorney on file, and it's not you. And so I was able to make, of my own sound mind, my own decisions, but if something happened, then he wasn't the one they were going to go to. So you could do that and name a best friend. You can name anyone else. So if something happens, they don't have that right to make those decisions on your behalf. And so I help draw up all of that. Also, there are documentations you can do to protect your children, and those are also available at a fraction of the cost you would pay anywhere else.
Wow, that is, I tell people all the time to get power of attorney, medical, financial, but I never really thought of it as in a domestic abuse situation where you wouldn't want your abuser having the power of attorney. That's a really good point to point out, Victoria. Thank you. That's something I think people may not think about.
Right. If he puts you in there, why are you going to allow him to continue your line of treatment, which is absolutely not going to happen. So it's things you can think about, and I help you come up with your escape plan and make sure, because that is the most dangerous time is when you try to get out. And there are things that we can talk about that I did that could really make a difference when you're trying to, to better yourself in the life for your children and get out.
Yes. And how many years has it been since you left?
16.
16 years. Wow. I admire you, Victoria Cuore, for coming on, for writing your story, helping other people. This is what Chatting with Betsy is about, folks. It's about giving people the chance to tell their story, to offer resources for people, to let you know you are not alone. And that's what Victoria wants you to know. If you're in a domestic violence situation, you're not alone. You do not have to be alone. There is help out there. And this is what Chatting with Betsy is about. This is what Victoria's Facebook is about, and her website. Can you repeat your website again, Victoria?
Yeah, it's acontagiousmile.com. And we have a Facebook support group too. And I just ask that when you ask for entry, it is a private group, and there are some questions that I ask, and it's because I vet the individuals so that I make sure that my group is safe and that you're who you say you are, so you don't have to worry, because once you're in there, you're family, and you don't have to worry about your attacker or your abuser being able to come in, because we keep the wolves out.
Very good. That's terrific. I feel so inspired just hearing you talk, Victoria. And what a great name for you, right? It fits. Victoria. You are victorious. You are victorious, Victoria. Well, I just thought of that. Yes, I'm a little kooky, folks. This is, I am who I am. I may not be the most polished talk show host out there, but folks, what you hear, this is me being me, and I think it takes a lot of guts, a lot of strength for Victoria Cuore to write a book and help other women, and to bring this topic out in the open, which it needs to be out in the open. And if you want to hear a podcast that talks about taboo, what people think are taboo, but they're not, then you need to subscribe to my show, Chatting with Betsy, because you never know who I will have on. And I cover all different topics that need to be talked about. And this one definitely need to be talked about. I have not discussed domestic violence before because the opportunity didn't come up. Victoria contacted me, and I was more than happy to have Victoria come on my show and talk about this subject that needs to be brought out in the open, because it does happen, folks. Don't judge people. I love what you said, Victoria. Just be there and listen. Don't judge, and just comfort the person, because I love that quote that you said, if you don't walk in our shoes, you can't tie our laces.
Tie our laces, yes.
I love that. That could go for caregivers too, folks, right?
That's true.
For anyone, and that's so true. We don't know. We don't know what goes on in other people's lives. We have no right to judge. And I want to thank you, Victoria Cuore, for coming on Chatting with Betsy and sharing your story. I wish you the best. Folks, the name of the book is Who Kicked First, a memoir. It is on Amazon. Where else can they get the book, Victoria?
Off of A Contagious Smile. If you don't mind, can I say one last thing to your listeners?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to thank you all for taking the moment to listen. This is a subject that really needs to get to the forefront. And if you have or are currently in this situation, I'm so proud of you for taking the first steps to even listen to this entire podcast. And if you don't feel as if you are worth fighting for, you are. You have such a spirit within you. You are worth the fight. I will fight it with you. If you don't feel like you're worth it and you have children, your children are worth it, because what they're learning is what's okay for how a man treats his mom, how a son can grow into a man and do the same actions, and that's how the cycle continues. And your daughter is learning that this is how a man is supposed to treat a woman, and that's what you can't do. We can stop this cycle. You are worth it. We will help you see that you're worth it. That inner light, even though you think it's not completely flickering anymore, it still is, and it can light up the darkest sky, and we can help you do that. And I don't want you to give up on yourself, because you are worth it.
Oh, I love that. That's true. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a cycle. When
yes.
Children see their mother being smacked around, they grow up thinking that it is normal. I worked in a preschool, and one of the little boys, and kids don't lie,
right.
Not about this. And one of the little boys said, my daddy threw a chair at my mommy and she went to the hospital. Another little boy told me, my parents fight. I said, oh, do you mean they yell, Raj? He said, no. He showed me his fist. He goes, they fight like this, Miss Betsy. And he showed me his fist. So children do see what's going on
at school. Right. That's how we get bullies at school, too.
Yes, yes, because, as I say, crap flows downhill. So if you're being beaten and abused, it's going to, you look for a victim to take it out on. I can't thank you enough, Victoria Cuore, for coming on. Folks, if you missed any of this you're welcome. My pleasure. If you missed any of this podcast, you can catch it wherever you hear your favorite podcast. Chatting with Betsy is all over, but I'm on Spotify, Spreaker, CastBox, to name a few. Please share this podcast if you know someone who is a victim of domestic violence. Please share this podcast to help them. And subscribe to my show. I have phenomenal guests on. So please subscribe so you can hear resources and people telling their stories. And the information about Victoria will be in the blog. I want to thank Jeannie White, who's station manager at Passionate World Talk Radio, for producing the show, writing the blog. Please read it. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible, who believes in giving people an opportunity to be heard, because everybody's story needs to be heard. If you have a story and you want to come on my show, you let me know. You can contact me through Passionate World Talk Radio, or you can email me, which is in the blog. So you have to read the blog to know how to contact me. Just a little tease. I love what I do. I do. I love what I do, folks. I'm really blessed. I'm so blessed and grateful.
You're very good at it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm blessed and grateful to be able to do this show. And I don't know who listens to me. I really don't. But I hope people get helped by this and by other guests who have resources to help different people about different subjects, different things that are going on in their lives. And, we do think we're alone, and we're not. And you said something about strength, Victoria. I have a saying, you have a strength within you. You have it deep down. Call upon it and harness it, because you do have it.
Yes.
And you can also be victorious, just like Victoria.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Folks, thanks for listening and sharing. Please review my show. Give it 5 stars, please, to get it out there. And I always say, in a world where you could be anything, so please be kind. This is your host, Betsy Wurzel. of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Take care, folks. Bye-bye for now.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at PHECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.